All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're cracking open a guide to navigating life's biggest challenges. That's about 2,000 years old. It's incredibly practical, it's powerful, and honestly, its wisdom is just as relevant now as it was then. We're jumping into the first chapter of the book of James.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to start with the whole purpose of hardship and the kind of wisdom you need to get through it. Then we'll get into the huge difference between trials and temptations. We'll look at hearing versus doing. And finally, we'll land on what James actually means by faith in action. All right, first up, we are tackling a question that, let's be real, every single one of us has asked at some point. Why do we have to go through difficult stuff? And this is the exact question James just dives right into. He basically argues that hardship isn't just random, meaningless suffering. Nope. He says it has a very specific purpose, one that's designed to shape our character. But before he even gets into that, it's so important to see how James introduces himself. He could have said, "Hey, I'm the brother of Jesus." But he doesn't. He calls himself a doulos, a servant. That humble posture is the key to his whole message, especially for the people he was writing to, who were scattered all over and facing some serious persecution. Okay, so this is where James lays out his logic, and it's kind of like a four-step journey. It all starts with facing trials, or perismos. James says these aren't punishments, they're tests designed to prove what you're made of. This testing then produces endurance, hypomone, which is this incredible ability to stay strong under pressure. And if you stick with it, the result is maturity. You become teleos, spiritually complete, whole, and ready for anything. So, if trials are the path to maturity, then how in the world are you supposed to walk it? Well, James points to one absolutely essential tool you're going to need: wisdom. And here's the really great news. James says if you don't have this wisdom, all you have to do is ask God for it, and he gives it heblos, which means generously, like with a totally open hand. And he's not going to scold you or make you feel bad for asking, because there's absolutely no shame in needing a little guidance when you're going through it. But there is one condition. You have to ask in faith, without wavering. Man, the metaphor he uses to describe a person full of doubt is just so vivid. You're like a wave out at sea, just completely at the mercy of the wind, tossed all over the place. There's no stability at all. He even has a specific Greek word for this state of mind, dipskohos. It literally means two-souled. You can think of it like a spiritual civil war going on inside. One part of you is trying to trust God, but the other part is hanging on, trying to trust your own gut. And James says this division makes you unstable in, well, every part of your life. And this is what that stable, God-given perspective actually looks like in practice. The humble person can be genuinely happy because their value is spiritual and eternal. And the wealthy person, they can be happy when they're humbled because they realize their money is temporary. It's like a flower that's here today and gone tomorrow. It completely flips the world's idea of success on its head, right? Okay, now we need to pause for a super important clarification. James has been talking all about trials, but he wants to make absolutely sure we don't get them mixed up with temptations to do wrong. They are not the same thing. And this difference is everything. You see, trials are external tests that God allows to strengthen us, but temptation, that's different. James is really clear. God never tempts anyone. The source of temptation is internal. It's our own desires, our epithemia. One path leads to life, the other leads to death. It's that serious. Then James breaks down exactly how this happens. He maps out the life cycle of sin, and you can see it's this really dark progression. It all starts with our own internal desire, and when we give in to that desire, it conceives and gives birth to sin. And once that sin is fully grown, you can see where the path ends. It leads to death. It's a predictable, destructive cycle that starts right inside us. But right after showing us that dark path, James just floods the scene with light. In total contrast, he reminds us who God is. He's the Father of lights, the creator of everything constant and true, like the sun and the stars. There's no shadow or change in him. He is unchangingly good, and every good thing we have comes from him, not from temptation and sin. So, all of this, understanding trials, getting wisdom, knowing where temptation comes from, it all builds to this one central point. The big so what question. What are you actually going to do about all this? And here it is. This is probably one of the most quoted lines in the whole book. Be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only.
And why is this so important? Because James warns that if you only listen without ever acting on it, you're literally deceiving yourself.
And to hammer this point home, James gives us this brilliant analogy. He says someone who only hears the truth is like a person who glances in a mirror, sees themselves for who they really are, and then just walks away and immediately forgets what they looked like.
And you can see the two paths right here. The forgetful hearer on the left just glances at the truth and is totally unchanged. But the effective doer on the right? They look intently, they stick with it, and they let it actually change how they live. One forgets, the other acts, and James says the doer is the one who will be blessed.
Okay, so what does doing the word actually look like in real life? In these final verses, James gets super practical, and he gives us this really clear, kind of challenging definition of what he calls pure religion.
And first, he tells us what it's not. He says, look, if you call yourself religious, but you can't control what you say, your religion is basically useless. He calls it vain. That lack of self-control is a dead giveaway that your faith isn't actually changing you from the inside out. But then he flips it and gives us the positive definition. And it has two sides, right? An outward part and an inward part. Outwardly, it's about compassionate action, caring for the most vulnerable people in society, like orphans and widows. And inwardly, it's about moral purity, keeping yourself from being corrupted by the world's values. It's a faith that's both compassionate and uncompromising.
And that's really what this whole chapter brings us to. After all the teaching, all the wisdom, it all comes down to this one really personal, challenging question that James leaves us with. He forces us to look beyond what we say we believe and to really examine our actions. Because if faith is ultimately what you do, what is your faith saying?